Hey guys, it's Coach Goodrich again, with a continuation of my 8th grade U.S. or American history. This is Unit 8, Part 2, which deals with the process and impact of American imperialism. If you have not watched Part 1 yet in review, please make sure you go back and do that. You guys, I would follow along with my guided notes out, even if you've already filled them in, because this is a review. But I was sick as a dog when I did this, so hopefully I have a little bit more brain power pushing forward as we're getting into this unit. These will be uploaded to my YouTube channel, and this, like I said, this is just a review for my 8th graders in my American history classes, my first and second period. Make sure that you have your notes out going over this with us as we're going. Boom, boom. So here, right here, pause for a second. These are the different colonial empires, imperial empires of this time period, starting in the year about 1900. As you can see, lots of different countries, especially in Europe, are trying to get into the mix of expanding their empires, expanding their colonial influences. We're going to talk more about why and how the United States got involved in that. So what is imperialism? Imperialism, in its most blunt form, is the process of one country trying to build an empire by conquering other countries. I always think of the evil empire in Star Wars. That's just where my brain goes. It even sounds like imperialism, empire, Imperials. All of it is related. All of it goes together. Two main reasons for this. Why would you want to do this? Two main reasons for this. Number one, you need natural resources in order to grow your economy. Oil, coal, timber, gold, etc. There's a bunch of different ones that you can be profitable with. But if you're a country, you need those in order to take them and turn them into finished products. And then what do you do with those finished products? Then you go to number two, the second reason, new markets. You sell those finished products using those natural resources back to these countries, these new markets, your colonial influences, your spheres of influence, so to speak, so that you can make money, you can make a profit. This is how the United States got started as a colony of Great Britain. They took all the natural resources, sent them to their factories, if you could call them that, their places of industry. They turned them into finished good and sold them back to us at a plus. Every country has done this, trying to make money, trying to grow as powerful as possible. Definitely as much as more of our global economies have become connected together, you see this more and more. Some examples, water, oil, wood. It just has rocks there. I think that's funny. But different minerals, construction, shelter, using rocks, agriculture, food, those kind of things. So how does the United States specifically get involved in this? Well, there are four main reasons specifically for U.S. Those two main reasons beforehand, the not just for the United States, but for everybody. That's why everyone gets involved in imperialism. You need natural resources, and you need new markets to sell them. This right here, this list, these four right here, are the four main reasons for imperial growth specifically in the U.S. Number one, industrialization. That goes along with the 2 points we talked about earlier. Need to have raw materials, natural resources, and new markets in order for your economy to grow. Number two, closing of the frontier. We talked about last unit. The Wild West is not so wild anymore. A lot of people are settling there. Manifest Destiny is completed. We've spread out from sea to shining sea. Now we got nowhere left to go. We got to go somewhere else if we're going to make money. If we're going to go somewhere else, we're going to be profitable. That's why we started looking out. Number three, global competition. Pretty much this is the country's excuse that everybody else is doing it, so we should do it as well. We wanted to keep up with Europe. We wanted to show everybody, hey, who's the man? It's us. Part of the way we did this was by expanding our Navy and naval bases around the world. And then number four, and I don't want to say this list is in order of importance, but in terms really of the grand scheme of things, this one's probably down here. Moral imperative. It was our burden as a civilization to civilize the quote-unquote heathens. Now, that's not necessarily my viewpoint, but that was the viewpoint at the time. We had to go off into Africa and the Caribbean and Central America and try to Christianize these people and give them culture and a language and pretty much make them more white. And that's unpopular, but that's kind of what was going on. Now, this is one of my favorite political cartoons, not because I'm a supporter of it, but because I just think it is so, like, smack in the face, like this would, like, how is this allowed? But you got all the good behaving white children in the back, and you have all the misbehaving Hispanics and African Americans in the front because they're being taken, quote unquote, against their will, trying to be re-educated so they can be productive members of society. I think it's hilarious. I think it's also very true, especially for that time period. You also see Indian in the back, and then African American working on the windows, and another one that's not quite outside yet. So kind of messed up. And this, the quote unquote white man's burden, and done in a political cartoon sense, trying to take these people to the school building so they can be re-educated back into civilized quote unquote society. Now, our major examples of American imperialism, there are 5 of them in this time period, and they start right after the Civil War. Number 1, Secretary of State Seward organized the purchase of Alaska in 1876 from Russia for about $7 million. People wondered why he wanted this land. He probably didn't even realize why he wanted this land because it did look like a giant ice cube, and they called it Seward's Icebox or Seward's Folly to kind of make fun of him. However, 30 years later, they discover the richest supply of oil in North America there. Who's laughing now? So it ended up being a really good thing. Good job, Seward. Number 2, the Spanish-American War. We got more information on that coming up. Number 3, the Panama Canal. Colombia, state of Colombia, or country of Colombia, had control of Panama and wouldn't budge when we tried to cut a deal with them so that we could make this canal. So the U.S., in true U.S. fashion, armed the Panamanian rebels, trained them, and sided with them in a war for independence against Colombia. Panama and a U.S. joint force ends up winning, so Panama now owns it, and they give us explicit and executive rights to control that little strip of land, which is now the Panama Canal. It's a big deal because now we don't have to sail all the way down underneath the tip of South America to get to anywhere, to get to the Pacific Ocean or get to the Atlantic Ocean. We cut that journey in more than by half in terms of we save a lot of time, which saves a lot of money, and it also allows us to have a much larger presence in both the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean. I'll show you guys on a map here soon what I'm talking about. Number 4, the annexation of Hawaii in 1898. Sanford B. Dole, yes, the guy from the pineapples, led a revolt of armed American planters and plantation owners against the Queen of Hawaii, overthrew her. It's over very quickly, and then they were allowed to be part of the United States as a territory before formally becoming a country, or excuse me, formally becoming a state after the after World War II. And the number 5, the Great White Fleet. As we were developing better ships, we gave them a nice bright white paint job, and we sent them all the way to Asia, all the way to Japan in 1907 to show off the best Navy in the world with a lot of stops in between to kind of showcase, hey, the United States, we as a country have arrived formally. So you got Alaska. Spanish-American War, we'll talk about this pretty soon, but these are Teddy Roosevelt, who's up here on the horse, of course, in true heroic fashion, and his Rough Riders. There's old Teddy and his group again. This is an overview of part of the Panama Canal today. Series of small channels and waterways and canals connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean. As you can see here, it literally splits the country of Panama in 2. But instead of having to sail, for example, say from Miami all the way down underneath South America to get to the western part of Mexico or the western part of the country like California, now cuts that journey in more than half by just sailing right through Panama. Allows us to maintain a large naval presence and merchant marine presence in both the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans with very little turnaround time. Hawaii, as you can see here, a collection of islands, and then the Great White Fleet, and that goes all the way back. There's even a ship back here, so this very large convoy. Now, like I said, we'll get into the Spanish-American War specifically. It was a short war, a splendid little war in 1898. Fought over 6, 7, maybe 8 months. The major cause was the Cuban Revolution against Spain. Cuba wanted its independence. Spain was not having it because they were so close to U.S. borders, just being in the Caribbean. We would maintain a military presence there. One of these ships, the USS Maine, was in Havana Harbor, and it blew up. Back then, we thought the Spanish attacked it. Probably it was more of a mechanical error. However, thanks to the yellow journalism, one of your vocab words, tactics of people like William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer, they're going to run these sensational newspapers that are going to really get everybody into a war fever, lead to the extreme patriotism or jingoism in favor of the United States, saying, hey, we can't be pushed around, we should take what's ours, these guys should pay for what they've done. And they did. Whether or not they were directly involved in the attack on the Maine or not, it was over very quickly, showed off our military superiority, both in terms of tactics and commanding officers, as well as our technology, which at this point started to be very, 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 very advanced compared to most of the world. Teddy Roosevelt, TR, and his Rough Riders, his volunteer unit of soldiers take Kettle Hill in Cuba. He's going to get very, very famous because of this, and will ride this fame eventually into the White House. While Admiral George Dewey and the Navy take over the Philippines, he also becomes very famous. The effects: America wins big. We get Puerto Rico, we get Guam, Cuba, the Philippines, and in effect, we begin our own empire, our own imperialistic approach. You have the USS Maine pictured on the left, the before, and this is after, so not much left to look at. An artist's representation of what it looked like, kind of example of yellow journalism. You see the bodies flying up in the air, very sensational. So you have William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer, who are the publishers, of the New York Journal and the New York Globe, I believe. But they did a great job. Peaceful treaty, right of awful slaughter. Our troops in Manila killed the Philippines by the thousands. 40 American killed. So we're, very blown out of proportion news. Drawing the Spanish look like guerrillas or brutes here. Literally, the Spanish brute murdered by Spain, not just killed in action. Old Teddy and his Rough Riders after the Battle of Kettle Hill. Admiral George Dewey taking Manila. And we see our wings expanded out over our newfound territory. And, of course, Lady Liberty in the name of peace riding forward. All right, so do the mini quiz, review it, make sure that you're going in the right direction. I will post the correct answers, or we'll make sure you guys get the correct answers for the mini quiz. And I appreciate it, guys. You guys have a wonderful day. Make sure you're filling out your notes as we're going. I know this is weird, but please do not hesitate to ask me for questions. I'll make sure you guys have my number. You guys can follow me on Twitter or on my YouTube page as well. YouTube page is Elijah Goodrich. Twitter page is at Coach Goodrich 85, which I'll be posting updates. I'm also going to get Remind app very, very soon, so that we can stay up to date with everything. But you guys stay safe out there. Keep following along, and I'll talk to you guys soon.